They called her cursed because everything she touched was followed by tragedy. So they sent a warrior to end it. But when he finally saw what she was weaving, he realized the truth was far more dangerous than the curse itself. And in that moment, he made a choice that turned him into an enemy of his own people. Subscribe to my channel for more powerful stories like this. The first thing people noticed about Alara was not her beauty. It was the silence that followed her. Not the peaceful kind, the heavy kind. The kind that made conversations stop mid-sentence and doors close just a little faster. They called her the Cursed Weaver. And in a place where superstition ruled harder than law, that was worse than being a criminal. Alara lived at the far edge of the settlement, where the dust never seemed to settle, and the wind howled like it had something to say. Her home was small, stitched together from wood, cloth, and survival. But inside was something else entirely. Color. Brilliant, impossible color. Threads of crimson, gold, deep ocean blue, woven into patterns no one could quite understand. Some said the designs moved when you stared too long. Others swore they had seen their own memories reflected in the fabric. No one stayed long enough to know the truth, because no one trusted her. It hadn't always been this way. Once people came from miles away to buy her work. Traders, travelers, even the wealthy. But then things started happening. A merchant who bought her cloth lost his caravan in a storm. A bride who wore her veil fell ill the next morning. A farmer who traded for her blankets watched his crops fail overnight. Coincidence. But coincidence doesn't survive long in fearful places. So they blamed Alara. They always needed someone to blame. Now she worked alone. Day after day, her fingers danced across the loom, weaving stories no one would ever wear. And every night, she lit a single lantern and kept working long after the town had fallen asleep. Because weaving wasn't just her craft. It was the only way she knew how to breathe. The night Kale arrived, the wind changed. He rode in just before dusk, his presence quiet but undeniable. A scout, trained, sharp-eyed, carrying the kind of stillness that came from years of watching before acting. He wasn't from the settlement, and he didn't trust it. Kale had been sent with a purpose. Reports had reached his people, whispers of unrest, strange happenings, and something unnatural. His orders were clear: eliminate if necessary. And in a place like this, fear pointed in only one direction. Toward the outcast. Toward Alara. He heard about her before he saw her. They say she brings death. Her threads carry curses. Best not even look at her work. Kale listened, but he didn't believe easily. Fear made people careless with truth. That night, instead of resting, he followed the edge of the settlement, and that's when he saw it. A flicker of light in the distance. Her home. He approached silently, moving like shadow across sand. The window was open just enough. And inside, he saw her. Alara sat before her loom, completely unaware of the eyes watching her. The lantern beside her cast a soft glow, turning her into something almost unreal, like a figure from one of her own woven stories. Her hands moved with precision, threading color through color with a rhythm that felt alive. Kale had seen craftsmen before, but this was something else. It wasn't just skill, it was expression, emotion, truth. Then he noticed the pattern. He stepped closer, too close, because what he saw made his breath catch. The fabric wasn't random, it was telling a story. A desert, a storm, a group of riders. And at the center, a figure, a scout. Kale froze. The figure looked like him. He stepped back immediately, instinct taking over. This wasn't normal. This wasn't coincidence. This was exactly what he had been sent to investigate. Inside, Alara suddenly stopped, her hands stilled mid-thread. For a moment, the entire world seemed to hold its breath. Then slowly, she turned her head toward the window. Cale moved before she could fully see him, slipping into the darkness. But it was too late. She knew. Alara didn't chase, didn't call out. She simply sat there, staring at the empty space where someone had been. Her heart beat faster, but not from fear, from something else, something familiar. Because this wasn't the first time. She looked back at the fabric, at the figure she had woven without understanding why, at the path it showed, at the choice it hinted at, and for the first time in a long time, Alara felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel. Hope. Outside, Cale didn't go far. He stopped just beyond the reach of the lantern's glow, his mind racing. He had seen many strange things in his life, but nothing like that. This wasn't just a woman weaving cloth. This was something deeper, something dangerous, or misunderstood. His orders were clear. Identify the threat. Eliminate it. Toward the woman inside, who didn't fit the story he had been told. Cale exhaled slowly. For the first time since arriving, he hesitated. Because something told him, this mission was not going to be as simple as following orders. And somewhere inside that fragile house of thread and silence, Alara continued weaving, not knowing yet that the man sent to judge her fate might be the only one who could change it. Cale did not sleep that night. Not because he couldn't, because he didn't trust what he had seen. The image of the woven cloth burned in his mind, the desert, the riders, and the figure that looked too much like him. He had spent years as a scout, trained to read signs, track enemies, and ignore distractions. But this was not something he could explain away. At dawn, the settlement stirred back to life. Dust rose with the movement of carts. Voices returned, doors opened, and just like that, the illusion of normalcy settled over everything again. But Cale knew better. Something was wrong here, and all roads pointed back to her. He kept his distance at first, watched, listened, asked careful questions. "The weaver?" one old man muttered, spitting into the dirt. "You'd do well to stay away from her." "Why?" Cale asked calmly. "Because nothing good comes from knowing too much." That answer stayed with him. Because it wasn't fear of harm. It was fear of truth. By midday, Cale made his decision. He would return to her. But this time, he wouldn't hide. Alara sensed him before she saw him. The moment he stepped near her home, the air shifted. Not with danger, but with recognition. She didn't turn immediately. Her hands continued their work, thread pulling through thread with steady precision. Only when he reached the doorway did she speak. "You shouldn't be here." Her voice was calm, too calm. Cale leaned lightly against the wooden frame. "And yet," he said, "here I am." Silence stretched between them, not hostile, but heavy with unspoken things. Finally, Alara turned. For the first time, they truly looked at each other. Cale saw what the town refused to see. Not a curse, not a threat, but a woman carrying something far heavier than either. And Alara saw what her weaving had hinted at. The man from the threads. The one she wasn't supposed to meet. "You were watching me last night," she said. It wasn't a question. Cale didn't deny it. Yes. Another pause. Then, why? Cale considered lying. It would have been easier, safer. But something about her made that feel wrong. "Because I was told you're dangerous." Alara let out a quiet, humorless breath. "And now?" Cale stepped inside. Slowly, carefully, like entering sacred ground. "Now," he said, I think people here are afraid of something they don't understand. That caught her off guard, just slightly, but he noticed. Fear keeps people alive, she replied. Sometimes, Kale said. Sometimes, it just keeps them blind. Her gaze sharpened. You should leave. But there was no force behind it. No urgency. Kale's eyes drifted to the loom, to the fabric she had been working on. And then, he saw it again. The same pattern, but clearer now, more complete. The riders were no longer distant. Their faces had taken shape. Their path had direction. And at the center, the scout. Kale stepped closer before he could stop himself. What is this? He asked quietly. Alara moved between him and the loom. Not aggressively, but protectively. It's nothing, she said. Kale shook his head. It's not nothing. He met her eyes. And you know it. For a moment, it looked like she might argue. Deny it. Shut him out completely. Instead, she looked tired. You should go, she repeated, but this time it sounded different. Less like a warning, more like a plea. Kale didn't move. I saw myself in it, he said. That broke something. Not visibly, but deeply. Alara closed her eyes for a brief moment, as if steadying herself against something inevitable. When did it start? Kale pressed. She opened her eyes again, and this time there was no hiding. I don't choose what I see, she said quietly. Kale frowned. What does that mean? Alara hesitated, not because she didn't want to answer, but because once she did, there would be no going back. My weaving, she began slowly, it doesn't come from imagination. Kale said nothing. It shows things, she continued. Moments, truths, things people don't want to see. Kale's jaw tightened. Like the storm that destroyed the merchant's caravan, he asked. Alara nodded. I tried to warn him. The bride who fell ill? I told her not to wear the veil. The crops? I showed them the drought before it came. Each word landed heavier than the last. Kale stepped back slightly. Not out of fear, but realization. They blamed you, he said. A faint, bitter smile touched her lips. Of course they did. Silence filled the room again. But this time, it was different. Because now, Kale understood. You're not causing these things, he said. You're seeing them. Alara didn't answer. She didn't need to. Kale looked back at the loom, at the unfinished story woven into its threads. And this? He asked. Alara followed his gaze. Her expression shifted. Subtle, but unmistakable. This is different. Kale's pulse quickened. How? Alara hesitated again. Longer this time, because this was the part that scared her. It's not just showing something, she said softly. It's warning me. Kale's eyes narrowed. About what? Gaze. And for the first time, there was fear in hers. About you. The words hung between them like a drawn blade. Kale felt something tighten in his chest. Me? He repeated. Alara nodded. There's something coming, she said. Something tied to you. To your people. Kale's mind raced. What kind of something? Alara stepped closer to the loom, her fingers brushing lightly against the woven threads. Betrayal. The word hit harder than any weapon. Kale's expression hardened immediately. That's not possible. Alara didn't argue. She simply pointed. Look closer. He did, and this time he saw it. Not just the riders, not just the path, but the subtle shift in the pattern, the way one figure stood slightly apart, the way the threads around him darkened, the way the story twisted. Kale's breath slowed. Who is it? He asked. Alara shook her head. I don't always know. That's not good enough, Kale said sharply. Her eyes flashed. It's all I have. The force in her voice surprised both of them. Silence followed. Heavy, unforgiving. Kale ran a hand through his hair, trying to think. to process. If this was true, if even part of it was true, then his mission wasn't what he thought it was. And Alara wasn't the threat. She was the warning. Kale looked at her again, really looked this time. He said. Alara hesitated, then nodded. I saw you before you arrived. And you didn't leave? A faint, almost sad smile appeared. Where would I go? That answer stayed with him. Because for the first time, Kale saw not just her power, but her isolation. Feared for telling the truth, blamed for things she couldn't control, alone because no one wanted to listen. And now, he had a choice. Report her, call her a threat, follow orders, or listen. Kale exhaled slowly. What happens next? He asked. Alara looked at the loom again, at the story still unfolding. That, she said quietly, depends on what you choose. Kale followed her gaze, and for the first time in his life, duty didn't feel like the right answer. Because the truth was already unraveling. The first sign that everything had gone wrong was the silence. Kale noticed it before the sun had fully risen. The settlement should have been waking, voices, movement, the usual restless hum of survival. Instead, nothing. No carts, no razgovors, no life. He stood just outside Alara's home, his instincts sharpening like a blade drawn too slowly. This isn't right, he muttered. Inside, Alara had already stopped weaving. Her fingers hovered above the threads, but she wasn't looking at them. She was listening. They know, she said quietly. Kale turned sharply toward her. Who? Alara's eyes met his. Everyone. And then, a sound. Boots. Many of them. Kale moved instantly, stepping to the door and peering through the narrow gap. What he saw confirmed it. Men. Armed. Not just townsfolk. Some wore the markings of his own people. His jaw tightened. They're not supposed to be here yet, he said under his breath. Alara stepped closer. You said you came alone. I did, but even as he said it, he knew what had happened. He had been followed, watched, and now they had come to finish what he hadn't. They think I've failed, Kale said. No, Alara replied softly. That hit harder than he expected. Outside, a voice rang out. Bring her out. Another followed, and the scout with her. Kale's hand moved to his weapon, not to draw it, but to feel its weight. This was it, the moment everything changed. You can still walk away, Alara said quietly. Kale looked at her, really looked at her. At the woman who had been blamed for truth, feared for honesty, left alone to carry something no one else would dare understand. Then he looked toward the door, toward the men waiting outside. His people, his duty, his orders. Too late for that, he said. And just like that, the choice was made. The door burst open. Dust and sunlight flooded the room as armed men stormed in. Kale moved fast, grabbing Alara's arm and pulling her behind him. Stand down, one of them barked. Kale didn't. A figure stepped forward. Commanding. Familiar. Kale's stomach dropped slightly. Commander Reth, he said. The man's expression didn't change, but his eyes were sharp, cold. You were given a simple task, Reth said. Kale didn't respond. And yet, Reth continued, you're standing between us and the threat. Alara's grip tightened slightly on Kale's arm. She's not a threat, Kale said firmly. A murmur spread through the men. Reth tilted his head slightly. Is that your official report? Kale held his gaze. Yes. Silence. Heavy. Dangerous. Then, Reth smiled, just slightly. That's unfortunate. And with that, he raised his hand. Take them both. Everything happened at once. Kale moved before the first man could reach them, striking fast, precise. He didn't hesitate, didn't hold back. Because now, this wasn't duty. This was survival. Alara, run, he shouted. She didn't argue, didn't freeze. She ran, out the back, into the open desert. Kale followed seconds later, narrowly avoiding a blade aimed at his back. The world outside exploded into motion. Footsteps. The thunder of pursuit. They're escaping. After them. Kale caught up to Alara quickly. "Stay close," he said. "I am," she replied, breath steady despite everything. They ran beyond the edge of the settlement, into the vast, unforgiving wilderness. No cover, no safety, only distance. Behind them, the hunters followed. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, turning the desert into a blazing trial. Still, they didn't stop. Not until the settlement was nothing more than a distant blur. Only then did Kale finally slow. "We rest here," he said. Alara nodded, though her legs trembled slightly. They found what little shelter they could beneath a jagged rock formation. For a moment, there was silence again. But this time, it wasn't empty. It was earned. Kale leaned against the stone, catching his breath. "They won't stop," he said. "I know," Alara replied. He glanced at her. "You're not surprised." She shook her head. "I saw this part." Kale exhaled. "Of course you did." Another pause. Then, "What else did you see?" Alara hesitated, because this was where things became harder. "I saw you hesitate," she said. Kale looked away slightly. "That's not exactly helpful." "I saw you choose," she corrected. That made him look back. "And?" Alara held his gaze. "And I saw what it cost you." Something tied in his chest again, because he already felt it. The weight of turning against his own. The certainty that there was no going back. "They'll call me a traitor," he said. Alara's voice softened. "They already have." Silence settled between them once more, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was understanding. "You should have left me," Alara said quietly. Kale shook his head immediately. "No, you would still have your place. Your people." Kale let out a short, humorless breath. "My place was never as solid as I thought." Alara studied him. "Why?" she asked. Kale didn't answer right away. "Because the truth was complicated. I've followed orders my whole life," he said finally. "Trusted that the people giving them knew better." He looked out at the endless desert. But this time, something felt wrong. He glanced back at her. "And then I saw you." Alara didn't speak. "I saw someone telling the truth," he continued, "and being punished for it." A pause. "I've seen that before." Alara's expression shifted slightly. "In yourself?" she asked. Kale didn't answer. Because he didn't need to. The silence said enough. After a while, Alara stood. "What are you doing?" Kale asked. "I need to see it," she said. "See what?" "The rest." She moved a short distance away, pulling a small bundle from her satchel. "Thread. Even now. Even here." Kale watched, confused. "You're going to weave?" he asked. Alara nodded. "They're still coming," she said. "And I need to know how." Because at this point, he had learned one thing. Ignoring her gift was not an option. He kept watch as she worked. Her hands moved faster than before, more urgent. The pattern formed quickly, too quickly, and then she stopped. Kale saw it in her face. "What is it?" he asked. Alara looked up, and this time, there was no hesitation. "They're not just tracking us." Kale's body tensed. "What do you mean?" Alara swallowed. "They know where we're going." A cold realization spread through him. "We're being led," he said. Alara nodded. "Into something." Kale stood immediately. "Then we changed direction." But Alara didn't move. "It won't matter." Kale frowned. "Why not?" Alara's voice dropped slightly. "Because the betrayal," she looked at him, "is already with us." Kale's blood ran cold. He scanned the empty desert around them. There was no one else. No movement. No sign of anything. And yet, the feeling remained. Something was wrong. Something deeper than pursuit. Kale looked back at Alara. "Then we don't just run," he said. Alara tilted her head slightly. What do we do? Kale's expression hardened. We find the truth before it finds us. For the first time since this began, Ilara allowed herself a small, uncertain smile. Because now, he wasn't just protecting her. He was standing with her. And together, they were about to uncover something far more dangerous than either of them expected. Night came colder than expected. The desert, so brutal under the sun, turned merciless in the dark. Wind carved through stone and bone alike, whispering across the sand like something alive, something watching. Kale didn't sleep. Not because he couldn't, because he was thinking. Ilara sat a few feet away, her loom resting idle beside her. For once, she wasn't weaving. That alone told him everything. "You're quiet," Kale said finally. Ilara didn't look at him. "So are you." A faint smirk touched his lips. Fair. Silence stretched again, but it wasn't empty. It was full of things neither of them wanted to say first. Finally, Ilara spoke. "They'll catch us soon." Kale didn't deny it. "I know." Another pause. "And when they do," she continued, her voice softer now, "they won't give you another chance." Kale looked at her. "They already did," he said. "I used it." Ilara shook her head slightly. "You don't understand." Kale's brow furrowed. "Then help me." She hesitated. And that hesitation said more than words ever could. Because this wasn't just about danger anymore. This was about him. "They won't just kill you," she said quietly. "They'll erase you." That's dramatic. It's truth. Now she looked at him. And there was no fear in her eyes this time. Only certainty. You won't be remembered as a scout. Or a protector. Or anything you were. She swallowed. You'll be remembered as a traitor. That word again. It lingered in the air like a shadow that refused to fade. Kale leaned back against the rock behind him. "I've been called worse," he said. Ilara almost smiled. Almost, but it didn't last. "Why are you still here?" she asked. The question caught him off guard. "I told you." "No," she interrupted gently. "Not why you stayed before." A beat. "Why are you still staying now?" That was harder. Because before, it had been instinct, a reaction, a refusal to do something that felt wrong. But now? Now he had time to think. Time to leave. And he hadn't. Kale looked out into the darkness. "Because if I leave now," he said slowly, "then everything you said is true." Ilara frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Kale turned back to her. "That I'm the kind of man who walks away when things get difficult." She held his gaze. "And are you?" Kale didn't hesitate. "No." Something shifted then. Small, but undeniable. Because in that moment, this wasn't about duty anymore. It was about who he chose to be. And who he chose to stand with. A distant sound broke the stillness. Both of them heard it. Horses. Kale stood instantly. There close. Ilara rose too, but slower. Not from fear, from understanding. "This is where it happens," she said quietly. Kale glanced at her. "What happens?" Ilara didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached for her loom. Kale's eyes narrowed. "Now?" Ilara nodded. "I need to be sure." Kale wanted to argue, to tell her there wasn't time. But something in her expression stopped him, so he watched. Her hands moved again, but not like before. This time they trembled. Not from weakness, from weight. The pattern formed slowly, painfully, thread by thread. Kale kept watch, his body tense, his senses sharp. The sound of approaching riders grew louder, closer. "Hurry," he muttered. "I can't rush this," Ilara replied. The wind picked up, sand shifted, time slipped, and then she stopped. Kale turned immediately. "What did you see?" Ilara looked up, and the look in her eyes, it wasn't fear. It was heartbreak. You leave, she said. Cale blinked. What? In the end, she continued, her voice barely steady, you leave. Cale shook his head instantly. No. Ilara stepped closer. You go back to them. That's not happening. You don't have a choice. Her voice broke. And that's what made him stop. Because until now, she had been controlled, measured, certain. But this was emotion. Raw, unfiltered. Why? He asked more quietly. Ilara swallowed hard. Because they give you one. Silence. Cale felt something twist inside him. One what? Ilara met his eyes. One chance to come back. The words hit like a blow. And you take it, she finished. Cale stared at her. No, he said again. But this time, there was doubt. Because part of him understood. Understood the pull of belonging, of identity, of everything he had ever known. They'll promise you everything, Ilara said. Your honor. Your place. And you think that's enough? Cale shot back. I think it's everything you've ever had. That landed hard. Because she wasn't wrong. Silence fell again, heavy, unforgiving. The sound of riders was very close now. Cale ran a hand through his hair. You said this was a warning, he said. Ilara nodded. Then maybe it's wrong. Her expression tightened. It's never wrong. Cale stepped closer. Then maybe I change it. That shook her. Because that had never happened before. You can't, she whispered. Cale held her gaze. Watch me. For a moment, everything else faded. The danger, the pursuit, the past. There was only this. Two people, standing at the edge of something irreversible. And then, the riders arrived. They surrounded the rocks quickly, efficiently. Cale stepped in front of Ilara again. Reth rode forward. You've made this more difficult than it needed to be, he said. Cale didn't respond. Reth's eyes flicked to Ilara. She's coming with us. No, Cale said. A pause. Then Reth nodded slightly. As expected. He gestured. The others held position, but didn't attack. Instead, Reth dismounted and walked forward alone. That means we do this properly, he said. Cale's grip tightened. Meaning? Reth stopped a few steps away. I offer you a choice. Ilara's breath caught slightly. Cale didn't look at her. What kind of choice? Reth's voice was calm, controlled. Return to your place. Silence. Walk away from this mistake, he continued, glancing briefly at Ilara. And everything is forgiven. Cale said nothing. Your name. Your future. The words echoed in the night. Tempting. Dangerous. And if I don't? Cale asked. Reth's expression didn't change. Then you lose all of it. A beat. And her? Reth looked at Ilara again. She was always going to be dealt with. That was enough. Cale stepped forward. No deal. Ilara closed her eyes briefly, because this wasn't what she had seen. And that terrified her more than anything. Reth studied him, then sighed. That's disappointing. He stepped back. Take them. Everything erupted again. But this time, Cale didn't just fight to escape. He fought to stand his ground. Because now, the choice had been made. Not for duty, not for survival, but for something far more dangerous. Something that couldn't be undone. The first strike came fast. Steel met steel under the cold desert moon, the sound sharp enough to cut through the wind itself. Cale moved like instinct had taken over, every step precise, every motion controlled. But this time, he wasn't just fighting to survive. He was fighting for her. Ilara, stay back, he shouted. But Ilara didn't move, didn't run, didn't hide, because something inside her had shifted. All her life, she had watched, seen, warned, and been ignored. But now the threads were different, because for the first time, she didn't just see what would happen. She saw what could happen. Kale deflected another blow, turning sharply and driving his opponent back. But there were too many. They were closing in. Reth stood at a distance, watching, waiting, like this was inevitable, like the outcome had already been decided. Alara's eyes moved, not over the battlefield, but beyond it, as if she could see something no one else could. Because she could. Not with her eyes, but with something deeper. Her gaze dropped to the ground, to the scattered threads that had fallen from her bundle during the chaos. Pieces of unfinished stories, unfinished truths. Her breath slowed. No, she whispered. He was being pushed back, step by step, closer to the edge of the rock formation, closer to being surrounded completely. Elara, he called again, but this time she didn't answer, because she was no longer just there. She was inside the moment. Her hands moved instinctively, gathering the threads, pulling them together, weaving, without a loom, without tools, without hesitation. The threads moved between her fingers like they had a will of their own. Kale saw it. Even in the middle of battle, he saw it. "What are you doing?" he shouted. Elara didn't look up. "I'm finishing it." Kale didn't understand. That something in her voice made him trust her. Around them, the fight intensified. Reth's men pressed harder, faster. Because they sensed it too. Something was changing, and they didn't like it. "Stop her," one of them yelled. Two men broke away from the fight, moving straight toward Elara. Kale saw them, and something inside him snapped. He moved with a force he hadn't used before, cutting through the space between him and them like nothing else existed. He intercepted the first, dropped him, turned, blocked the second, but it cost him. A blade caught his side. Not deep, but enough. Kale staggered slightly. "Elara," he warned. But she didn't stop. Couldn't, because now she saw it clearly. The truth. Not just of what would happen, but why. Her hands trembled as the pattern took shape. And then she saw him. Not Kale, Reth, standing in the threads, not as a commander, but as something else. The one who turned, the one who betrayed. Elara's breath caught. "It's you," she whispered. Across the battlefield, Reth's eyes snapped toward her, as if he had heard, as if he knew. Kale followed her gaze. "What?" he demanded. Elara looked up. "It was never your people," she said. Kale frowned. "What are you talking about?" Elara stood slowly, the woven threads hanging between her hands like something alive. The betrayal, she stepped forward, was him. Silence hit harder than any weapon. All movement paused. All sound seemed to vanish. Reth's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes did. Kale turned slowly. "That's not possible," he said. But even as the words left his mouth, he remembered. The timing, the arrival, the way Reth had known exactly where to find them, the way everything had been too perfect. Reth exhaled softly. "I was hoping it wouldn't come to this," he said. Kale's grip tightened. "Explain." Reth stepped forward, calm, unshaken. "Our people are weak," he said. Murmurs spread among the men. Old alliances. Old rules. His gaze sharpened. "I'm building something stronger." Kale's stomach turned. "By betraying your own?" Reth didn't flinch. "By reshaping them." Ilara's voice cut in. "And anyone who sees the truth becomes a threat." Reth looked at her. "Yes." No denial, no hesitation, just truth. Kale felt it settle in his chest. Heavy, cold. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was real. "You sent me here," Kale said slowly. Reth nodded. "To confirm the rumors. And when I didn't," Reth's voice remained steady. "You became part of the problem." Silence. Then, Kale laughed. Not from humor, from disbelief. So this was never about her, he said. Reth tilted his head slightly. She was always useful. Ilara's grip tightened on the threads. Kale stepped forward. You're not taking her. Reth's expression hardened for the first time. You're in no position to stop me. Kale didn't respond, because he knew he didn't have to. And for the first time, she raised the woven threads, not as something fragile, but as something powerful. This doesn't end the way you think, she said. Reth's eyes narrowed. Then show me. Ilara took a breath and pulled. The threads tightened, shifted, and suddenly, everything changed. The wind rose, violent, unnatural. The ground beneath them trembled slightly. The men staggered, confused. What is this? Someone shouted. Kale looked at Ilara and realized she wasn't just showing the future anymore. She was rewriting it. Reth stepped back slightly. No, he said. For the first time, there was uncertainty in his voice. Ilara's eyes locked onto his. You built your future on lies, she said. The threads glowed faintly in the moonlight. I'm just showing everyone the truth. And then, she released them. The world snapped into motion, but not as it had been. Reth's men turned, not on Kale, on him. Because now, they saw it. The truth. His betrayal, his plan, his lies. Them growled. Reth's composure shattered. You don't understand. But it was too late. The fight turned, fast, brutal. Kale didn't move at first. He just watched, as the future Ilara had seen unraveled, and something new took its place. Finally, he looked at her. You changed it, he said. Ilara's hands trembled slightly. I chose to. A small, disbelieving smile formed on Kale's face. Good choice. The battle ended as quickly as it had begun. Reth fell, not as a leader, but as a warning. Silence returned to the desert. But this time, it wasn't heavy. It was free. Kale turned to Ilara. What happens now? He asked. Ilara looked at the threads still in her hands. Then slowly, she let them fall. For the first time, she said softly, I don't know. Kale nodded. Good. She looked at him confused. Why? Kale's expression softened. Because it means we get to choose. Ilara held his gaze, and for the first time in her life, the future didn't feel like a burden. It felt like possibility. She stepped closer. And what do you choose? She asked. Kale didn't hesitate. You. The word was simple, but it carried everything. Ilara smiled. Not the sad, distant smile she used to wear, but something real, something earned. And together, they walked away from the past, not as outcasts, not as fugitives, but as something stronger. Two people who had faced fate and decided to write their own.